Hello, 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 and welcome to episode 75 of the Rent to Rent Success podcast. And today you are in for a treat. This is a golden episode. It's all about how to buy properties without a huge deposit and without a mortgage at the start. So it's a way in for lots of people who maybe thought property wasn't for them. So keep listening. I'm so excited to be here today with Gillie Barlow. Gillie is an expert in creative property strategies. And these are the strategies I say that can really rocket your success, even if you don't have a lot of money to be starting off with. Gillie is an amazing woman. She's really passionate about helping people, and she believes that everybody can do this. And the only criteria is your own mindset. And I totally agree. So welcome to the show, Gillie Barlow.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephanie. Brilliant to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
It's amazing to have you with us. I've heard you in many rooms. I mean, I knew of you before, of course, but after Clubhouse, I just feel I've gotten to know you so much better. And I couldn't wait for you to come on here and talk to our audience all about all of these creative strategies. And let's start off. I just said to you, Gillie, it looks as though you're in a hotel. Where are you? And you said, I'm in one of my hotels. I've got 7 hotels here in Oxfordshire, and this was the first one I did on a creative strategy. So I'd love you to tell us a bit about how you first got into it.
Oh, wow. Well, into purchase lease options, it was a long time ago. So I was actually 21, so sort of like dinosaur era back there. And actually strategies weren't being taught. So I'd come out of school at 16. I'm an identical twin. And we struggled immensely in that they didn't like us being identical. There's a sort of pride thing with teachers. And so we'd ended up milking it, as you can imagine, and come out with nothing, really squat. And it was some years later that I ended up going to the Kalahari Desert to work at the age of 21. And while I was out there, I had a dream about, crazy, isn't it? A dream about properties in the mountains and disabled children. And I ended up 2 years later acquiring my first deal. Whilst having got back to the UK, I was gutting fish in a fish farm. So not the greatest of careers, but it shows you that this can be done. It's not about the money. And that was the first deal I basically got with no money in at all. And it was the most unbelievable experience. In actual fact, I describe it as the stepping stones across a river from one bank to another. And you know what, Stephanie, I never expected to get to the other side, but I never didn't expect to. It was the journey en route that taught me monumental stuff, and I used to get to a pointed rock and think it was the end. In that particular instance, on that project, the door opened. But I get to flat rocks and think it was a doddle and nearly drown because of pride. So it was just the most incredible journey. And so that's where it all started for me.
Yeah, I love this. I think this is a great title for this episode. From gutting fish in the fish bar. There's that, the lyrics, are you working as a waitress in the cocktail bar and you were gutting fish in the fish bar? But you've gone from there to 7 hotels. And I know that that's only part of your...
3 hotels. I said several, so it's three in Oxford. Yeah.
Oh, 3 hotels, and I know that you've got a wider portfolio. Mm-hmm. So, how did you go from you were there gutting fish in the fish bar? Walk us through how you actually the mechanics of you actually getting started. People worry about getting started and how to do it.
I think, to be perfectly honest, naivety was my best friend. And so when I first got the chalet, so the first deal I got was actually a mountain chalet in a place called La Clusaz in the Haute-Savoie, the French region of the Alps. And it sleeps 14. I still have it today. So that was over 30 years ago.
Wow.
Shows my age. And it was just incredible. But I think that I have to be honest. I didn't know I was doing anything clever. I'd had a dream in the mountains. I wanted to get a place in the mountains in order to set up a charity for disabled children. And my attitude, and this is the key, was I'm going to do it. The question is how. If I could just encourage people to wake up with an attitude like that, rather than if, it's I'm going to do it. The question is how. What I did was I devised a way of doing it, which is now being taught today. 30 years on. Now, I'm not saying I created the strategy, but I certainly didn't get taught it. And it's only in today's world that these strategies are being taught by many people who don't even do them. And I feel like I woke up and smelt the coffee. But it was unintentional. It was like, I'm going to do it. So how can I do it? And everybody's, I want everybody to realize we're A, problem solvers, but B, we are what we want to be. I love that phrase, where the mind goes, the man follows. It's like if you're driving in a car and you stare at a tree, you're going to hit it. And so we want an attitude that gives us a high altitude. I'm learning to fly at the moment, and it's exactly the same terminology in an aeroplane.
Yeah.
We want to be like eagles, not like chickens pecking in the ground. And we have to have a mindset that says, yes, I'm going to conquer. And I don't know where that came from, because I had absolutely nobody around me. They thought I was completely daft as a brush. And in actual fact, out there in the French Alps, I was sitting there, shows my age, with my Filofax in a cafe. And they came in and they laughed at me and they said, what are you doing? And I said, I'm just jotting down a few figures. And the story starts with me going back to the chalet where I knew the owner of the ski resort was coming for a meal. So I sat next to him and I said, if I was to get one of these, would you like to rent it out? And the long and the short of it was, we signed a contract in the back of a van at a motocross stadium in Oxford where his son was doing motocross. And they had my chalet for 5 years in the winter season and gave me £13,000 in advance. This was after I'd purchased it, so that I could pay the initial lender the option fee and then the mortgage. And that paid for most of what I needed, the costs I had to cover. I then started taking disabled children to France in the summer the following year. And the weeks I didn't take them, I rented out that covered the rest of the costs. It was just like a puzzle to me.
That's phenomenal. Now, we're going to have to rewind a bit here, because we may have lost quite a few listeners who don't know what a purchase lease option is. So let's cover that off there, Gillie, if you could explain.
Absolutely. So first of all, when we invest in property, I believe the two important words are clarity and creativity. But the thing is, Stephanie, we can't be creative if we're confused. So I always say to people, wherever you are on your property journey, if there's confusion behind you, let's create clarity there. Because once you've got clarity up to the point that you're at, when you feel confused, there's only one area of confusion to get through to create clarity. And it's just so much easier. Options are very, very simple. People overcomplicate them. Honestly, if they were complicated, I wouldn't have been able to do them. And so I teach people. My youngest student is 13 years old. My children, majority of them are financially free. They're aged between the age of 17 and 23. And it is about simplicity. So an option is three things. Number one, what you're going to buy the property for in the future. It's agreed today. Number two, how long will the contract last for? And number three, what will you give the vendor each month as an option fee or a rent or whatever you want to call it? That's it. Now, if you had 40 people in a room and I was teaching them about purchase lease options, I'd say, right, guys, I'm going to give you all a painting canvas. I'm not going to give you a title. Would any two people come back with the same picture?
No.
Same with options. So there are many people out there teaching, and they teach example after example after example after example. And the thing is, we could stay here for 10 days and I could give you examples, because the point is, there are never two options that are the same, but they start with those three things. Now, the legalities of an option is that you have to exchange £1. So in the agreement, the solicitors exchange £1. And that's number 4. We've got number 1, what you're going to buy it for in the future, maybe. Number 2, how long is this contract going to last for? And number 3, what you're going to give them each month. Now, the 4th point is that you give £1 as part of the contract, although negotiation starts at number 4, because it might be that they need some arrears paid off. And you might get an investor in to pay those off. but it will come off the end purchase price, probably because it's negotiation. It might be that they want a pair of shoes every month. I'm being silly here, but it's all about negotiation. It might be that they want a deposit to go on holiday. They want £5,000. So that comes off the end price. You don't have to pay that because you can get an investor. Believe you me, there are so many people out there with money in that sort of amount. What's that getting them in the bank? That's getting them what? £50 a year if they're lucky, probably 25. So if you give them 1% a month, that's £50 a month. That's nothing if you're making 2,000 profit a month. But where we give them deposits, or indeed we refurb a place, we must make sure that over and above that amount that we spend, we're going to make plenty of profit in the time of the contract. Because if we decide to walk away at the end and not buy it, and we only make 20,000, but we've borrowed 20,000, that's as good as a smack in the face with a wet kipper. What a waste of time.
Exactly, yes.
Spending 20 grand, whether it's yours or somebody else's, you probably want to be making at least 40 over and above that, and probably a significantly larger amount if it's over 5 years. But what they need to understand is 0.4 down is all negotiation. So the only things that make up an option to start with is those 3 points. Now, the one thing about an option is, assuming it's £1, and you may have people go, well, I don't know anybody that's going to give me a deposit or help me with a deposit. So if you're absolutely sure that we can't help you find somebody to put down a deposit or do a refurb, let go of those ones, because there are plenty out there. There are plenty of options out there. So just go for the ones where nothing goes down. Okay, so I was describing one in Clubhouse today with Ben. And Ben basically had got a £550,000 option during lockdown. It was £1. It was for 5 years, and he was giving the vendor £2,300 a month. But he was making £1,400 profit. It cost him £1. And of course it didn't cost him £1 because the solicitor just paid that. So it cost him nothing. Okay, so sometimes they cost you nothing, sometimes they cost you something. But the absolute joy of it is you don't need a mortgage. So nobody checks your credit score. You could have come into the country. I remember when my former husband came into the country as a Kiwi, a New Zealander, you couldn't get a credit card for about a year. It doesn't matter if you've got £75,000 worth of debt. It doesn't matter if you're 16 or you're 116. It doesn't matter whether you're educated or you're not educated. It doesn't matter if you've got nothing in your bank account or you've got millions in your bank account. You see, the thing is, Stephanie, is it works brilliantly for people with nothing, but it also works brilliantly for people with money. So if I tell you that my lowest return on investment, please understand, anybody listening, that return on investment merely means how hard is your money working for you. My lowest return on investment is 444%.
Wow, that's incredible.
I tell you that on a single let, the average, please understand this is just an average, is 6 to 10%. On an HMO, you don't really want to be looking at anything below 15%, and it might be 20 to 30%. On service accommodation, maybe 50 to 80%. But if you do all those strategies as an option, your ROI grows. And again, if people don't quite get this, just remember, the higher the number, the better the deal. So we're looking at something from 6%, but for me, starts at 444%.
Yeah. So you quadruple whatever money you invest, basically.
Often, sometimes they might make 100% and not 444. It's just me personally. And you've got everybody, a deal stacks if it works for you. So a deal for me might stack, but a deal for you might not. And equally, a deal for you might stack and a deal for me might not. So it's all about the minimum profit and be happy. So in the same way as purchasing, you want to make sure that it stacks for you. It's exactly the same when we come to an option. So people have come to me and they've said, oh, Gillie, I've got an option. I go, great. Would you have a look at it? Yeah, of course I will. Don't do it. Well, why not? Well, you're going to lose £2,000 a month, but it's an option. I go, I don't care if the Queen's coming for tea. That doesn't work. Don't do it. And people get so hooked on doing options, they find one or their neighbour wants them to do one because they think they're not there to find, but they are. It's all So that's just a very simple, brief description of what an option is, but genuinely, that is what an option is.
I love that. Thank you so much. I love the way that you bring such clarity to it. But the only thing that's bamboozling my mind is, so you're there at 20 on the ski slopes and then later doing your fish gutting. How in heaven's name do you know about options and all of this malarkey?
Well, back then I could barely read. So, when I came back from my next job after the Clearwater Fish Farm, where I was gutting fish, I went up to the big £12,000, and I ended up working for a company. Honestly, the only thing that got me into jobs was my mouth, because I had no experience. So I ended up working for a company called NAG, Numerical Algorithms Group. I couldn't spell algorithms, didn't know what they were. And then actually, bizarrely enough, I got headhunted for a company called Risk Decisions, which was a risk analysis software company in Park End Street in Oxford. And I used to drive in the mornings, and, I really didn't know how to spell analysis. And I remember the third month in, my director, I'd done my trial period, and he said, Gillie, I don't think it's really working. And I said, no, you're right. These boffins are walking around with holes in their socks, swearing the whole time. And I just couldn't understand what was going on. And I said to him, I need to hand over, obviously, the sales I've made. He said, what sales? I said, well, you gave me a target and I hit it. Because my mindset was such that I'm going to understand this in layman's terms if they don't even help me. And I know how to speak to directors who aren't boffins, but I'm not so good at speaking to boffins because I don't speak their language. So he said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, these are the sales I've made. And of course, I stayed on and I became director of the company. And again, it was just my mouth. It was just literally. And I learned so much. Do you know what was amazing about that? I learned about risk analysis. I designed Monte Carlo, who was just a guy that chucked dice in the air. And I learned what it meant. And in property, this is crucial because I know how to teach people how to do risk analysis on every single piece of due diligence. And do you know what it is? It's simple. It's your worst case scenario, your best case scenario, and your most likely case scenario. And so I've loved putting the two together. And after I'd done the fish farms, I realized I ended up in Risk Decisions, and I got made redundant. And at that stage, I started to teach people, I don't know why, sort of as a sideline, how to be careful in what they invested in. Because believe you me, I made some mistakes with off-plan property because I trust people a lot. And, we all do that. I mean, we don't all do that, but I know many people have done that. And I made some bad decisions on off-plan properties in other countries, and I'm sure loads of you can guess where. And it was tough. But my attitude was, I've lost X amount of money, I'm going to double it. And I know people that I've been helping over the last couple of years who've lost literally $250,000 through rogue people, bad people. And I've given them the reins to say, right, we're going to double that. We're going to double it and we're going to conquer. It's all about mindset. So moving on, I ended up building my own home by doing an option on a piece of land in where I still live today. So I didn't know what an option was. This was 1992. So not many years later, I'd set up SADA, Sophia's Alpine Disabled Adventures. I'd started taking disabled children away to build their confidences up in the Alps. It was registered officially in 1994, and we were very blessed to win the Childline Award in 1996. But I now was building my own home in 1992, and I went to the owner and I said, look, if I give you 3 times the value, can you give me up to 10 years to pay for it? I had no idea I was doing an option. Nobody told me I was doing an option. Who was teaching in 1992 about options? Nobody. They were in nappies. The people teaching today were probably still in kindergarten. So I started just creating strategies that obviously I haven't created because they wouldn't have allowed me to do it if it wasn't there, but I didn't know that. Initially, as I said, when I did the chalet, I wasn't doing it to be clever. I was doing it because I wanted it. I didn't realize it was going to be an incredible investment. I still own it today. I ended up purchasing it eventually for £175,000, and it was valued at 1.2 million a year and a half ago. Whether it would sell for that, I don't know. And guess what? It's unencumbered. So for me, that's a great joy because I can let people go there. Or, instead of just servicing rich people, it gives people an opportunity to have a break in the mountains with their families. When I did the house, by now I was doing the house and I built it. I managed to eventually get a full build, eventually a full mortgage when I did buy it, because of course the value of a new build was far, far more than the cost of the build. And over a period of the 10 years, I continued to pay off the money because they rearranged it slightly differently because of course an option is whatever you agree with the vendor. And so I moved on. And then I had quite a big break because I had 3 beautiful children.
Yeah.
I then started again. And what I realized was, in the meantime, I'd started going to prisons to do voluntary work. And many years before, I'd gone out to Thailand to visit my sister and brother-in-law. And it's a story in its own right. I'd gone on a peasant's train, had my computer stolen, ended up in the back of a truck with a live pig, who then got to a conference. But anyway, that's beside the point. And whilst I was at that conference, I was sitting on the floor. My sister and brother-in-law got up to speak in fluent Thai. And I had the desperate urge to get up and speak. And I was thinking, what on earth would you speak on, girl? And it was a seed sown. And so I want to encourage people. There are seeds in you that need to flourish and need to grow. And sometimes they're scary. I went into the prisons and I started speaking. It was great because most people couldn't see me, not the guys in the prisons, but outside. I felt freedom when I walked in there. I put my phone in a cupboard. I walked in there and it's like having freedom going into prison. Crazy, eh? And I learned that I had a passion for teaching. And my passion now is to teach every single last person who wants to listen to me that they're precious, that they're a gift, and they have absolutely every reason to believe that they can conquer and they can get what they want. If they want a £5,000 passive income at the end of the year, we can sort that. They have to believe in themselves and they have to take action. They need to surround themselves with people that do them good and not harm. And they need to learn to listen to the right people and have an element of faith, whatever that faith's in. If it's faith in themselves, that's what they need. And I've learned that that is my absolute passion. And over the last few years, I've grown and grown my portfolio. And since 1989, right up to today, I've put money into one deal in 2017 to a total of 38 grand. Since then, I've not done it again. And that's the way I rock. I know how to do these deals without money, which means I can potentially give out money at a far cheaper rate than other people might be and give people a step up. But the point is, if my return on investment is going to be greater by doing an option or joint venture in a very specific way, because there are the ways, rent to rents, whatever it is we do, why wouldn't I do that?
Yeah.
And I practice what I preach. It's really important. All I was going to say, children, all the young adults I teach, all the ladies that I teach, all the people I teach in their different areas, I teach because I do it myself. And they learn. And it's really important to learn from experience. That was a very long answer to a short question.
Yeah, but I love, there's so much richness in there, Gillie. And but what really does come across is your passion to help people. And I love what you say, and I totally believe that as well, is that, you know, the financial freedom we want is absolutely available to you. And it's just a case of learning how to move forward. We also have some, we've got exchange with delay completion and lease options in our portfolio. And just wanted to say to any listeners or anyone watching, episode 50 of the podcast, I go into a 4-unit property that we've got on an exchange with delay completion. So it's just another example for you. And Gillie, going back to you, what if somebody was listening and thinking, my mind is blown, I didn't know all of this was possible? Where would you say that someone should start?
Very good question. I think I say this again and again. I would suggest they challenge themselves and they go to a mirror, and without looking at flesh, they just speak to themselves and say what they think of themselves on a scale of 1 to 10. Because if their self-worth or their self-belief is below a very high number, that's where they need to begin. And that doesn't mean 6 months of counseling. It means speaking to the right people. I have a very simple exercise to annihilate the stuff within individual people against property. Obviously, I can't do that against life, but against property. Because if we start on rocky ground and we have negativity, lack of motivation, need for perfectionism, fear, I mean, it's big. You know, if you walk into something like this with enormous fear, then you're going to be in trepidation, because we could be talking about numbers with loads of zeros on the end of them.
Yes.
You know, we could be talking about all sorts of things. And I can help people to annihilate those things against property. Because the trouble is people think the wrong things. If I'll give you an example. If someone said, Gillie, I've been left some inheritance and I'm really scared of using my money. Do you know what I say? Don't use it. That was easy, wasn't it?
Yes.
Use it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to let you use your money. If you don't want to use your money, don't use it. I would say later on, if it's a lot of money, you need it to work hard for you because you're getting really squat in a bank.
Mm-hmm.
But at the moment where fear rides or fear exists, let's put it to one side. Let's park it. I think that once they realize they need to do a little bit of work on themselves, and it might take a week, it might take 2 weeks, it doesn't have to take a long time. And I'll tell you a story. I was driving down Park End Street one day, coming to risk decisions. Absolutely petrified. It was in my first month, and I literally woke up and cried every time the alarm clock went off. And I remember saying a little prayer saying, make me wise. Now, I didn't realize that that would help. That potentially would happen instantly. You assume it's good. I'm thinking, oh, why didn't I be wise 4 years ago? You know what? Sometimes these things we have to go through aren't months and months and months and months or years of learning and sorting. They can be sorted immediately if done in the right way. They're just to help ourselves. But if we end up starting our journey on rocky ground where we have no self-belief, where we're confused to the hilt, we are treading on uneven ground to start with. You know what I say to people? Imagine you're on a beach and it's rained. So the sand is wet and you've got a pile of leaves on there. On a pile, not spread out. And I say to you, here's a garden broom, you know, one of those really heavy garden brooms. I say, can you sweep those leaves off the sand, but don't touch a grain of sand? You're standing there like this, trying really hard. Mm. And then you think about an alternative. You've just built the foundations of your house and that lovely white cement that's dried. You've got leaves on there and I say, sweep the leaves off. Easily done. If you walk into property with confusion, lack of self-belief, it's going to be hard yakka. It's going to be like trying to get those leaves off that sand. You're going to be worried constantly about whether you're doing it right or whether you're doing it wrong, whether you've grabbed at bits of due diligence, but you haven't quite done it all, you know? And we can do this in a very simple way, but we've just got to be talking to the right people. You know, I think that investing in yourself is really important. And I really struggled with that because I had no money at all. But, you know, in this time, finding money isn't that difficult. But even if you know somebody who can get you a loan, you know what? If you get a loan for 6 grand or 10 grand, it's probably going to cost you about 80 quid a month. So you know what? It's good to have a little bit of a challenge because if you don't, you might not work as hard as you need to. And so I think it's about investing, but being really wise at who you listen to. You can get this off Google. You can come into Clubhouse. I teach you so much. But actually, if you want to push the boat out a little bit, you need a group of people who you trust, who you can go to, who when you fall over, pick you up and brush you off and don't say, told you so. That's
and the amazing thing is as well, Gillie, is that you have regular trainings where you take people step by step through this. And if you want to find out more, then if you go to gilliebarlow.com, everything's there. If you would like to get started with lease options, Gillie is an amazing place to start to get on track with the right mindset and also the right tactics and strategies to help you move forward to success. So, Gillie, what do you think are the biggest mistakes people make when they are moving into this? And maybe they've heard of lease options, and where do you see people going wrong?
I think that I know that I've said this already, but I think that it's massively mindset. So people go wrong in that many years ago, I felt that I was being pulled back. And I say it's like a picture of somebody in quicksand and me personally on a bank, but with a lead attached to me. And you know what? If you've got negativity in and around you, it's like being pulled back. It's like those heavyweight chaps that pull trucks. You know, they move forward, but it's really slow. And if you're on a lead and someone's sinking, you could try and move forward, but it's slow and it's hard. You need that lead cut. You need to fly like an eagle. But you can't necessarily do that if the people live with you, but you can learn to put your earmuffs on. You've got to really, really understand that can pull you back. But equally, if you don't understand the art of due diligence and how simple it can be, but how important it is, you can really, really mess up. You can mess up in terms of whether a deal stacks, who you might work with. I have so many people coming to me and they go, Gillie, it's a nightmare. I go, what's going on? Oh, my best friend and I are JVing and I want to kill her. And that's because they haven't done due diligence on their dynamics, on their values, on their languages, and they may not be the right person to work with. They've got to do due diligence on so many levels, but it's not difficult if you know what those levels are. But I say to people, due diligence is often like a jungle. You walk into the Amazon, you don't know where to put your feet, you don't know what you can eat, you don't know what you can touch, and you're frantically grabbing at things. People grab at bits. I think I've done it. I've done a bit there and I've done a bit there. And so therefore they're not clear of what has to be done. They're just doing what they think needs to be done and they fall over. And I've got the 11 biggest mistakes you might make in HMOs. I've got the 7 mistakes you might make in options. There are loads you can make, but if you've got clarity and you've got good teaching and you've got people surrounding you, you're not likely to. I made a big mistake. Shall I share one with you that I made?
Yeah.
Doing a purchase lease option about 10 years ago. And I'm far too trusting, but I've learned the hard way. That doesn't mean I still don't trust, but there's a time and a place. And the lady I was doing one with, it was on a beautiful guest house in my hometown. A very good place to be investing for various reasons. And we hadn't signed the contract yet. She was very keen. I'd said that I wanted extra bathrooms made upstairs. She'd agreed that she would do it because I was going to be giving a really good price for the house and good monthly amount. And I went to her totally without thoughts, thinking, I'll do the nice thing. I'll tell her that I get a really good price for showers and she can use my LNPG account. So I said, oh, by the way, I've got an LNPG account, do feel free to use it. So she used it for £16,000 worth of bathrooms and then pulled the rug. And my name was on the account, sucker had to pay for it. Nobody I've ever taught has ever done anything like that again. Now, what did I do? I went out and made 32 grand on my next one. Because you know what? We can't cry over spilt milk. We can be a victim and we can let it affect ourselves moving forward. But remember, we take with us what's in the past, the things that help us move forward. And, I learned very quickly that today's the beginning of the rest of my life. What am I going to do? I'm going to double my loss. Well, not double my loss, but double the amount of money I make to make that back plus some. Crazily stupid of me. I can point the finger at my solicitor and say, but I thought it was all ready. Well, I haven't signed anything, so 3 pointing back at me. But it was a lesson learned. And so we do make mistakes. What I want all of you out there to learn is to learn from our mistakes.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely, Gillie. Well, it has been incredible having you here today. And you're such a wealth of information on the creative strategies and an inspiration. And so I do remind people, do check Gillie out, www.gilliebarlow.com, and also on Instagram at Gillie Barlow Property. And we'll also have the details in the show notes for people listening. So Gillie, I would love to end on learning a little bit more about you and your portfolio today, because I know, and because you're running 3 hotels, and what else are you doing? Do you manage properties or do you have all that outsourced?
So I learned very quickly what my dynamic was. And there are many tests you can do out there that show you what dynamic is. Mine's a deal maker and a supporter, which is why it matters massively that other people get to where they want to get to. It's not just that I'm a nice person, it's my dynamic. But my dynamic is not to look after tenants or to fill properties with tenants. I did love it. And initially, when I set up one of my businesses, which is all the houses within that business are for vulnerable people. And I used to go to the houses of people who were ex-prisoners or mothers and babies or whatever it was. And I used to look after them. But it wasn't conducive. I love it. But it wasn't conducive of my time. Because as a deal maker, I need to go and find more and more houses for them. Mm-hmm. So I basically give all my HMOs to other people, be they the council, charities or professionals, as 5-year rent-to-rents. So I never go near them. And with regard to the hotels, they're really small and large guest houses. Call them hotels, guest houses. And I teach people. One of the things I teach people, having learnt, if I knew what I knew now, I would have saved myself £42,000 in my first year of running serviced accommodation. So now I teach that because I don't want anybody doing that. And so the only time I go to them is to work, like today, because it's quiet, because I have 750 million young adults living under my roof and a dog and a cat. So it's not quiet there. So I come here to work, and that's the only reason I come here. With the other ones, my son actually, who's 21, got his first little hotel essay when he was 19. And he went to Africa for 4 months. And what I teach is to run them completely passively, more so than HMOs, without the need of a management company. So when I teach people things, there's nothing upselled afterwards. They know how to do it. So I do love manipulating the prices with the service accommodation. So I do that, but I can be anywhere in the world to do that. But I do very little. To be honest, my portfolio is there's a massive variety within it, because I'm an entrepreneur, so I'm a bit naughty in that I don't stick to 2 strategies. So I've done development, I've done SA, I do SA, I've done HMOs. The only thing I don't do is single lets, because the ROI is not good enough. But what I love and what I do now is teach. So I go around the country speaking. I've written a book. I'm just about to publish my 2nd book, but I want people to get this. I want people to understand the importance of mindset. So the book I wrote that's out there now is all about them. It's, is it okay if I say what it's called?
Yeah, of course.
It's understand your truth to find success. I want everybody to be successful, but firstly, they've got to understand in their own mind what success means. And secondly, they've got to understand themselves and realize what could trip them up and sort it. And my book takes them on a journey to help them sort what might stop them. It's only 3 hours of audio. It's Kindle and audio. And I actually audio it myself because the passion in me had to do that. Yeah. And I want them to understand that they can do this, but it's all about who we are. So I do very little with my portfolio. I just enjoy it. And the majority of time I'm teaching and speaking.
That's brilliant, because we all come into property for freedom. So do check out Julie's book. It's a fantastic book. You can pick it up at Gillie Barlow. Can people buy it at gilliebarlow.com, Gillie?
No, Amazon or iTunes.
Yes, so go to Amazon or iTunes. Repeat the title again for us.
Understand your truth to find success. But if they put Gillie Barlow in, they'll find it.
Yeah, Understand Your Truth to Find Success by Gillie Barlow, a fantastic book. And this has been a beautiful conversation. Thank you so much, Gillie, for sharing with us. Thank you for watching and for listening. And is there anything you would like to say as we close, Gillie?
Yeah, I think what I'd like to say is one of the main problems with people is they compare after they decided that they can do this. And I love, I think it was Roosevelt who said, comparison is a thief to joy. It will just steal your joy. And the other thing is, when I was in Africa once, I was visiting the charity that I support out there for widows and orphans. And we gave a lift to a chap to his college. And on the back of his T-shirt, it said, champions don't happen by chance. You have to choose to be one. It's choice.
That is a phenomenal way to end the episode. Champions don't happen by chance. You have to choose to be one. I love that. Thank you, champion Gillie Barlow. And again, thank you for watching and for listening. Until next week, have a great rest of the week. And remember, believe bigger, be bolder, be a game changer. Bye for now.